pretend we're dead." Those words still echo inside me, the last command from my husband as we lay broken at the bottom of a cliff, betrayed by the very son we had raised. Ethan's laughter rang above, sharp and triumphant, while Amber clutched her phone like proof of victory. We were supposed to be a family. Instead, our own child had chosen to silence us with a push that nearly ended everything. I could barely breathe, but the true wound wasn't in my ribs. It was in my soul, shattered by the cruelty of my own flesh and blood. Arthur and I had been married 40 years. He was a carpenter, strong hands turning wood into art, while I, Carol, taught children how to read and dream. Our life wasn't rich in money, but in laughter, routine, and the warmth of family dinners. We had 2 sons, Jonathan, our firstborn, whose charm lit every room, and Ethan, quieter, darker, always watching from the corner. Jonathan was the golden boy, straight-A student, beloved by neighbors. Ethan, he was different, and though I loved him, he carried an invisible weight, a resentment that grew each time someone said, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" I told myself sibling rivalry was normal. I told myself time would teach Ethan he was enough. But time betrayed us. When Jonathan died, the world stopped. 25 years ago, the police called a hiking accident, a fall. They said it so plainly, as though explaining spilled milk. He slipped, they claimed. Ethan sobbed harder than anyone at the funeral. He collapsed into Arthur's arms, trembling. For a moment, I thought tragedy had bound us closer, but something in Arthur's eyes was wrong. He wouldn't look at me. His jaw clenched every time Ethan cried. I buried suspicion because grief was heavy enough. A mother chooses hope even when her heart whispers the truth. Life staggered on. I threw myself into teaching, Arthur into his workshop. Ethan grew into a man. Married Amber, a woman with a smile sharp enough to cut glass, and built a life that looked perfect from a distance. But whenever they visited, the air in our home shifted. It wasn't love they brought with them, it was pressure. "Mom, Dad," Ethan would say with that polished smile, "this house is too big for you now. Why not sell? Move somewhere smaller. Let us handle things for you." Amber's voice dripped with sugar. "Carol, you've given your whole life. It's time we take care of everything." But their eyes betrayed them. Not love, greed, hunger, calculation. I tried to brush it aside. Parents want to believe in their children, even when evidence whispers otherwise. Until one night, I overheard Arthur's voice in the kitchen, low and heavy. "I can't carry this anymore, Ethan. I've hidden your secret for 25 years, but your mother deserves the truth." My heart froze. That night, Arthur confessed. His words cut deeper than the sharpest blade. He had been there on the cliff when Jonathan died. He saw the fight, Jonathan furious after discovering Ethan had stolen from our savings. Jonathan threatened to expose him, and Ethan, our quiet boy, shoved his brother. Jonathan fell. Arthur swore it was a moment of anger, a slip, an accident. But then he admitted something worse. He had hidden Jonathan's blood-stained scarf that night. He couldn't turn his surviving son over to the police, so he lied. He let me bury Jonathan as though fate had stolen him when it was Ethan's hands that pushed him away. For 25 years, Arthur carried that lie, and I unknowingly protected a murderer. The betrayal split me open. One son killed, the other a killer, and the man I trusted most had chosen silence. As if fate wanted to twist the knife deeper, just days later, Ethan and Amber invited us on a special trip. "To celebrate your 40th anniversary," Amber said brightly, handing me a printed itinerary. Hiking, A picnic, photographs by the cliffs. Her handwriting was elegant, but to me it looked like the stroke of a death sentence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark with Jonathan's scarf in my lap, Arthur across from me, his face gray with shame. We both knew the truth. This wasn't a celebration. It was an execution, and we were expected to smile all the way up the mountain. Before I take you up that mountain, I want to hear from you. If your child invited you on a trip but your heart screamed danger, would you still go? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Tangled Heart Stories, where sacrifices, betrayals, and the twists no one sees coming are told just for you. The morning of the planned anniversary hike arrived, but the days leading up to it were filled with a suffocating heaviness. Ethan and Amber visited more often than usual, their smiles too rehearsed, their gestures too precise. Amber showed up one evening with a casserole dish, setting it on my kitchen counter as if she were the picture of a dutiful daughter-in-law. "You should rest more, Carol," she said sweetly. "Arthur, too. Let us take some weight off your shoulders. You've done enough." Her words dripped with honey, but her eyes flicked toward the cabinet where we kept important papers. When she thought I wasn't looking, she slipped her phone out and angled it ever so slightly, capturing a photograph of the shelf. I felt my stomach clench. Later that night, I told Arthur what I had seen. He rubbed his temples, his voice heavy. "She's just being curious." But I knew better. Amber wasn't curious. She was calculating. It didn't stop there. A few days later, over dinner, Ethan leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers against the table. "Mom, Dad," he said casually, "you really should consider granting me financial power of attorney. It's just a precaution. What if something happened to you suddenly? We'd be scrambling." Arthur stiffened, but said nothing. I set down my fork, my voice colder than I intended. "We're not dead yet, Ethan, and we're capable of managing our own affairs." Amber gave a nervous laugh. "Oh, Carol, don't be so defensive. We only worry about you. You've sacrificed so much already." Her tone suggested I was ungrateful for their concern. Ethan leaned forward, his smile disappearing. "This house, this property, it's too much for you. Sometime soon it'll be ours to manage anyway. Why not make the transition easier?" There it was, the mask slipping. Arthur slammed his fist against the table, the plates rattling. "Enough, Ethan." But the damage was done. I saw it in Ethan's eyes, the glint of entitlement, the certainty that he would win eventually. As the days edged closer to the hike, I noticed little changes. Important envelopes were shifted, drawers opened just slightly, keys misplaced. Amber's perfume lingered in the study, though she had no reason to be there. One evening, while folding laundry, I overheard Ethan muttering on the phone in the next room. "Don't worry. By next month it'll all be settled. They won't be in the way anymore." My breath caught. My hands trembled so violently that a stack of towels fell from my arms. I told Arthur what I'd heard. His face went pale. He opened a drawer in his workshop and pulled out a small box I had never seen before. Inside was Jonathan's blood-stained scarf, folded neatly. "I kept this all these years," Arthur whispered. "Maybe I thought I was protecting Ethan, but now I think it's the only thing that can save us." I stared at the faded stains. 25 years of silence pressed against my chest. The night before the hike, Ethan and Amber came by with wine and a cake. "A toast," Amber said brightly, raising her glass, "to 40 years of love and to many more memories together." I forced a smile, but her words echoed like a taunt. As they left, Ethan leaned close, his breath hot against my ear. "Don't bring anything tomorrow, just yourselves. We'll take care of everything." The way he said, "Take care," made my skin crawl. That night, Arthur and I sat in silence. Finally, he said, "If we go tomorrow, we may not come back." "I know," I whispered. He reached across the table, his rough carpenter's hand covering mine. "But if we don't go, they'll keep pushing until they destroy us piece by piece. Maybe tomorrow is our only chance to end this." There was a pause. Then he added, "I'll bring the scarf and my phone. I'll keep the recorder running." For the first time in weeks, I saw a spark of resolve in his eyes. The next morning, the sun rose golden and indifferent, as though it didn't know the world could end for us before noon. Amber hummed cheerfully as she packed the picnic basket, her lipstick a shade too bright. Ethan slung a rope over his shoulder with practiced ease, his grin too wide. And I clutched Jonathan's scarf in my bag, my heart pounding, knowing this climb would decide everything. The morning was deceptively beautiful, the kind of crisp autumn air that usually promised apple pies cooling on window sills and laughter in backyards. But for me, every breath felt like borrowed time. Ethan drove us toward the mountains in his spotless SUV. Amber sat in the front, snapping cheerful photos as if documenting a family album. Arthur and I sat in the back, silent, our hands brushing occasionally, our eyes heavy with what we hadn't said. Jonathan's scarf lay folded inside my bag. Its faded red thread felt like the only truth in a world painted with lies. "Isn't this perfect?" Amber cooed, turning to smile at us. "A family day. We don't do this enough." Her voice was sweet, but her eyes caught mine in the rearview mirror, cold and sharp. Ethan chuckled. "After today, everything will be different." The way he said it made Arthur's jaw tighten. I felt his hand squeeze mine. When we arrived, the mountain trail stretched ahead, steep, winding, framed by trees whose leaves burned with autumn fire. Amber adjusted her scarf. Ethan slung the rope over his shoulder, and Arthur set his phone carefully in his jacket pocket. I knew the recorder was on. The climb was grueling. Every step crunched against gravel. Every breath scraped my throat. Ethan strode ahead, strong and steady, while Amber kept close to me, too close. "Careful, Carol," she said, her hand brushing my arm. "Wouldn't want you to trip." Her grip lingered, just a fraction too firm, like a reminder that she could push instead of catch. Arthur lagged slightly behind, his eyes scanning the terrain. I could tell he was calculating. Not just the path, but every angle, every risk. Halfway up, we stopped at a clearing. The view was breathtaking, valleys rolling endlessly below, the horizon painted gold. Ethan pulled out his phone. "Let's get a picture," he said, voice too bright. "A memory to last forever." He motioned for Arthur and me to stand near the edge. Every nerve in my body screamed. I stepped back, but Amber nudged me forward with a little laugh. "Don't be shy. Closer to the cliff. Look at that view." Arthur's hand found mine, his grip unyielding. I felt his body tense, a warning. The camera clicked, and in that frozen moment, I saw the reflection of Ethan's face in the glass of his phone screen. Not joy, not love, calculation, anticipation. Later, as we paused for water, Amber sat beside me, her smile gone. "You know, Carol," she murmured, her tone suddenly sharp. "It must be exhausting holding on to things that don't belong to you anymore. Houses, money, legacies. Don't you think it's time to let go?" I turned to her, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Some things can't be stolen, Amber. Love, integrity, respect, those belong to those who earn them." Her smile faltered for just a moment before she turned away. As we neared the summit, Arthur stumbled. Ethan was instantly at his side, but not in concern. His hand pressed against Arthur's back, a little too firm, a little too ready. "Careful, Dad," he said softly, almost kindly. "Wouldn't want an accident." The word hung in the air like poison. Arthur met my eyes. In that split second, I saw his decision. His secret was about to spill. We reached the top. The cliff stretched wide, the valley yawning beneath us. Ethan set down the rope, gesturing grandly. "Perfect spot for a picnic," he said. Amber spread out the blanket with theatrical enthusiasm, but her eyes darted constantly toward the edge. Arthur cleared his throat. His voice was rough, but steady. "Ethan, before we enjoy this, there's something your mother needs to hear from you." I froze. Ethan's head snapped toward his father, eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" Arthur's hand slipped into his pocket, brushing against the scarf he had carried. "Jonathan, 25 years ago, I saw what happened." Amber stiffened. Ethan's face drained of color, then hardened into something feral. "You don't know what you saw," he spat. Arthur stepped forward, his voice breaking but loud. "I saw you shove him. I saw you let him fall, and I stayed silent, but not anymore." My breath caught. The words I had waited a lifetime to hear were finally spoken. Amber's hand shot out, gripping Ethan's arm. "Don't," she hissed. But Ethan wasn't listening. His face twisted, rage erupting. "You don't understand," he shouted. "He was going to ruin me. Everything I've built would have been gone. I had no choice." The valley carried his confession far, echoing like a verdict. Silence followed, broken only by the wind. Arthur pulled the scarf from his jacket, holding it out like an accusation. "This is Jonathan's, his blood. I kept it. I should have gone to the police, but I was weak. I won't be weak again." Ethan's eyes flared. He lunged, grabbing for the scarf, his body driving Arthur backward toward the edge. I screamed. Amber darted forward, but not to help. Her hands pushed against my shoulder, forcing me closer to the drop. Arthur shouted, his voice raw. "If we die today, Ethan, you'll go with us." And in that instant I knew the climb had reached its point of no return. The ground gave way beneath us. 4 bodies tangled in betrayal and desperation crashed into the abyss together. The world spun. The wind roared. And as darkness closed in, Arthur's last words pierced through. "Pretend we're dead." The world shattered into chaos as our bodies plummeted, tangled in a storm of flailing limbs, gravel, and screams swallowed by the wind. The cliffside blurred. Sky, rock, earth, until all that existed was the weightless terror of betrayal and gravity, dragging us down together. When the impact came, it ripped the breath from my lungs. My chest burned. My arm screamed with pain. But somehow, I was alive. Arthur groaned beside me, blood streaking his forehead, his voice barely a whisper. "Carol, don't move. Don't breathe. Pretend we're dead." I froze. Every instinct begged me to cry out, to gasp for air, to reach for him. But I understood. If we moved, if they knew we had survived, Ethan and Amber would finish what they started. Above us, I heard footsteps crunch against gravel. Ethan's voice strained but frantic. "They're gone. They have to be." Amber's breathless reply followed. "It looks convincing. The fall was enough. No one survives that." I forced my body into stillness, ignoring the throb of broken ribs, the sting of dirt in my mouth. My eyes stayed half closed, lashes fluttering just enough to glimpse their silhouettes against the sky. Ethan paced near the edge, his voice trembling. "We'll say it was an accident. They slipped. We tried to save them. Everyone will believe us." Amber touched his arm, her voice low but cutting. Be careful what you say, Ethan. We have to agree on every detail. If you slip, if you contradict me, we're finished. I know, he muttered, but it's over. After today, everything's ours. My heart clenched. Even now, with the valley carrying their words into eternity, they felt no remorse, only relief. Minutes bled into eternity. I heard them moving, their whispers sharp with fear and triumph. And then, silence. The kind of silence that seeps into your bones. Arthur shifted ever so slightly, his lips brushing my ear. The phone, still recording. I wanted to weep. Even through pain, he had managed to protect the truth. Hours passed before I felt the tremor of ropes above us, the distant shouts of rescuers. The world narrowed to fragments, hands gripping my arms, voices calling my name, the glare of lights, the spinning blades of a helicopter. Through it all, I kept my role. Limp, silent. A woman hovering on the edge of death. At the hospital, machines beeped steadily beside my bed. Amber stood in the corner, crocodile tears painting her cheeks, her voice dripping false grief as she spoke to the nurse. She's too fragile, Amber said softly. If she wakes, just let me be the first to see her. I'll know how to comfort her. The nurse nodded politely, unaware of the venom behind her smile. But she didn't know about Chloe, the young nurse who leaned close when Amber stepped out. Squeeze my hand if you can hear me, Chloe whispered. Summoning every ounce of strength, I moved a finger. Her eyes widened. She glanced quickly at the monitor, then back at me, her voice firm. Don't worry, you're safe with me. For the first time since the cliff, I let hope flicker. Meanwhile, in the waiting room, Amber and Ethan continued their performance. They were so stubborn, Amber told a doctor, her voice cracking. We begged them not to climb, but you know Carol. She's proud, independent. She insisted. Ethan shook his head, lowering his eyes like a grieving son. We did everything we could. I tried to grab Dad. I couldn't reach him. Their lies spread like a poisoned perfume, filling every corner of the room. But they didn't know Arthur's phone was safe in the hands of Detective Miller, who had been called after Chloe caught sight of the message scrawled faintly in ink on my palm. Jonathan. Ethan. That evening, I stirred just enough to hear footsteps beside my bed. Ethan leaned close, his whisper hot against my ear. You shouldn't have asked so many questions, Mom. Some truths are better left buried, just like Jonathan. The cruelty in his voice cut deeper than any wound. He thought I was fading, thought these were the last words I'd ever hear. I wanted to scream, to rise, to strike him with the truth of what he had done. But instead, I let my body stay limp, my breathing shallow, because revenge was already unfolding. Hours later, the door burst open. Voices filled the air, firm, commanding. Footsteps heavy with authority. Detective Miller's voice cut through. Ethan Harper. Amber Harper, you are under arrest for attempted murder and conspiracy. The room spun with chaos. Ethan's head snapped up, fury distorting his features. What? No, you don't understand. They fell. It was an accident. Amber gasped, turning on him instantly. Don't you dare put this on me. It was your idea. I told you not to. Their facade crumbled in seconds, the unity of their greed shattering under pressure. Each blamed the other, their voices rising, their lies unraveling. From the safety of my bed, I let my eyes open, just enough for Ethan to see. His face blanched, his voice cracking into a roar. No, you were dead. I saw you die. And in that moment, with the whole world watching, he condemned himself. Arthur entered the room then, pale but standing, his voice strong despite the bandages across his chest. You've lived on lies for 25 years, Ethan. But today, the truth finally caught you. I turned my head toward my son, not the child I once knew, but the man he had become, twisted by greed and resentment. My voice was soft, but every syllable carried the weight of justice. The son I loved died with Jonathan. What's left is only a stranger in his skin. Ethan's eyes filled with rage, Amber's with panic, as officers led them away in handcuffs. For the first time in decades, the air in my lungs felt free, but even as the doors closed behind them, I knew our story wasn't finished. There was still a trial ahead, still questions to answer, still two innocent children, Ethan and Amber's young ones, caught in the wake of their parents' sins. Justice had arrived, yes, but healing was another mountain we would have to climb. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not in temperature, but in spirit. Marble walls, stiff benches, the heavy silence of strangers gathered to witness the unraveling of a family. Amber sat to the left, her once perfect hair limp, her lips pale. Ethan sat beside her, chains around his wrists, his eyes burning with a mixture of fury and desperation. He still carried himself like a man wronged, even as the evidence weighed on him like lead. Arthur sat next to me in the gallery, his hand warm on mine. Bandages peeked from beneath his shirt, but his back was straight, his eyes steady. For the first time in years, I felt we were united, not by silence, but by truth. Detective Miller stood tall as the recordings played. Ethan's voice echoed through the courtroom. "We'll say it was an accident. They slipped. After today, everything's ours." Amber's voice followed. "Be careful what you say, Ethan. If you slip, we're finished." Gasps rippled through the room. Murmurs spread. But the final blow came when the jury heard Ethan whisper over my hospital bed, "Some truths are better left buried, just like Jonathan." The weight of Jonathan's name fell like a stone into still water, ripples spreading to every corner of the room. Amber broke first. She sobbed, her body shaking, pointing at Ethan. "It was him, all him. I just wanted to help the family. He forced me." Ethan sneered, spitting venom back at her. "Liar! You planned every step. You pushed her at the cliff. You're the reason we're here." Their marriage, once built on greed, crumbled into ashes under the eyes of the law. When the judge's gavel struck, his voice rang out with finality. Ethan Harper, Amber Harper, found guilty of attempted murder and conspiracy, sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. The words were a hammer, heavy, irrevocable. I closed my eyes, a tear slipping free, not of grief, but of release. 25 years of silence, of buried truth, ended with that verdict. Jonathan had finally been given the justice he was denied. Afterward, in the quiet outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for words. I ignored them. My gaze was fixed on the two small figures waiting with a social worker, Ethan and Amber's children. Their faces were pale, confused, eyes wide with fear. They didn't understand the sins of their parents, only that their world had been ripped apart. I knelt before them, my heart breaking and healing all at once. "You're not alone," I whispered. "You'll always have a home with us." Arthur placed his hand on the boy's shoulder, his voice gentle. "Your Uncle Jonathan would have wanted you to know love, not lies." For the first time in weeks, I saw the faintest flicker of hope in their eyes. The months that followed were not easy. Healing never is. Nights were haunted by nightmares of the cliff, of Ethan's voice whispering like a ghost. Days were filled with the challenges of raising children again in our 60s. Homework, tears, the slow rebuilding of trust. But there was laughter too. There were moments when Jonathan's spirit felt alive again, when the boy grinned with mischief, when the girl hugged me tightly after a bedtime story. Slowly, the house once poisoned by fear began to breathe again. 1 year later, we gathered in the backyard for a small celebration. Arthur grilled on the old barbecue. The children chased each other through the grass, their laughter ringing against the evening air. I sat on the porch, Jonathan's scarf folded in my lap. I no longer held it as a wound, but as a legacy, a reminder of truth, of love, of justice finally served. Arthur joined me, lowering himself carefully into the chair beside me. He looked at the children, his eyes moist. "Do you think we did the right thing?" he asked softly. I reached for his hand, squeezing. We chose truth over silence. We chose love over fear. That's all we could do. Later that night, I stood before the children, telling them about their Uncle Jonathan. Not as a tragedy, but as a man who loved fiercely, who stood for what was right. Respect isn't given by blood, I told them gently. It's earned through love and kindness, and that's what we'll build together. Their small hands clutched mine, their eyes searching my face. For the first time, I felt peace. To those of you listening now, perhaps you've carried betrayals in your own family. Perhaps you've been silenced, overlooked, dismissed as weak or unimportant. Let this story remind you, silence only feeds the darkness. Truth may wound, but it also heals. And when betrayal comes from within your own bloodline, remember, you still have the power to choose love, to choose boundaries, to choose justice. Jonathan never got to speak his truth, but through Arthur and me, through this trial, his voice lives on. And in our home, with 2 children learning that love is stronger than lies, his legacy continues. If this story touched your heart, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever witnessed betrayal within your own family? What did justice look like for you? Here, no one suffers alone. We speak for each other. We rise for each other. Don't forget to subscribe to Tangled Heart Stories, where every tale is a reminder that sacrifice, betrayal, and justice are threads in the fabric of family. Together, we honor the truth.